and it hits me, oh my gosh, this is that triangle.
You know, there's explanation for everything that occurred in the Rendlesham Forest incident that doesn't involve aliens at all.
It was completely silent. It comes right over our heads.
He saw a classic flying saucer really standing in the clearing.
He turned over to my father and held his hand, and he looked in his eyes and he said, "We're not alone."
Welcome to Podcast UFO for our live show. We're live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on podcastufo.com. During the show, feel free to participate live in our chat room. And don't forget to like us on our very active Facebook page.
Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host. And tonight we have a couple of guests coming up. We have Ben Moss and Tony Angiola. And we're going to be talking about a little bit about the Socorro case and so much more. It should be an entertaining show. Those guys are a lot of fun. And before that, we have Alejandro Rojas coming up with the news. If you support the show, I want to thank you very much. And if you're thinking about supporting the show, the benefit is you get to listen to the full 2 hours and all the archives. And it's a one-time sign-up. It's pretty easy. And for $2 or more per month. I guess that's it, Alejandro. We in the United States have a new president.
We do.
We do. And I don't know about you. I stayed up real late last night. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. It happened, and it's going to be a very interesting ride, however long it lasts.
It will. That is one thing that I've already agreed with a few people, is that it will definitely be interesting. Anything going on in the UFO world?
Yeah, I mean, speaking of stories that we've posted that are just as they've been reported, and we'll see these ones haven't been picked up by the tabloids and turned into something different because they're really going crazy with that Hawaiian story still funny out there. Yeah, it's popping up all over this alien base. It's turned into this Hawaiian alien base story when it was innocently just a photo posted to MUFON by someone, and the guy even said it might have been some kind of piece of junk on my lens.
Or it could have been a bird.
Or it could have been a bird, but now, you know, if you Google Hawaiian UFO, you'll get the story about how it's an alien base. So, it luckily hasn't happened yet, but though this one is pretty fascinating, all on its own. This is a sighting that was reported to MUFON. The incident took place on October 22nd at 8 p.m., where this witness saw a white triangle that they said was well-defined with a red globe at its base. So that's kind of strange. They said they saw it for about 20 minutes. It remained stationary. They described it as looking like two long white fluorescent bulbs configured in such a way that it gave the appearance of a triangle shape with a red light at its base. The interior appeared darker than the lighted objects when they looked at it with an 8 times power binoculars. And it's fun with this because the person submitted pictures. Some people drawings, I should say, not pictures. Some people get frustrated. Why are there drawings? Why aren't there pictures? But not everybody can get pictures. And you know what? Even if there are pictures, I think it's helpful to have drawings of what the perception from the witness is, because often, as we know, the pictures don't turn out to be anything like what they said they saw.
Good point. And the perspectives can always be different as well from, especially if you're taking it with a iPhone camera or something like that.
Yep, exactly. So the MUFON guys, did look it over. I don't know that they came up with a conclusion, not that I read, I might have missed it, but it says they're still investigating, but they thus far have not found anything to be in that area that it could have been. And I don't even know if I mentioned where, but this is in Florida, and this was a couple of people who saw this. This was in Bradenton, Florida. So this was pretty interesting. You know the area?
Yeah, my aunt lived there for years. I know that whole area has built up really fast. For over 30 years. It's like every time I've seen it, it's changed. It's very, very busy area. highly populated, bursting at the seams.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, Florida's supposed to be a nice area. I mean, I loved it when I went to the MUFON Symposium recently. It was beautiful, so green, and the weather was great. It was really nice. Although sometimes you got to watch out for the wildlife, the large reptilian wildlife in the area.
Yeah, alligators.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Mm-hmm. Right. So what else is going on?
So another one. This happened on October 28th at 7:45 p.m. And this one, I don't know why when I read it, and especially the witness testimony, I can tell their excitement. It was a couple years ago, MUFON did kind of a play where they read these, but everybody just kind of read them. And I think they could have infused some more excitement into it. So I'm going to kind of do that here for you.
Okay.
Is that okay? Some UFO theater here?
Yeah.
Let's see here. I saw a strange object right in front of me in the sky that was sitting still. I thought it was a plane, but it was too close to the ground to be a plane. So I rolled my window down to listen just to be sure. It began to slowly and at an extremely smooth and constant speed fly over my car, heading the opposite direction of me. As it passed overhead, I saw that it had 3 red lights on all 3 corners, and the front one was blinking. How was that?
That was really good. I was ready to do sound effects, but you didn't say you heard anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
And then I heard a loud noise.
Noise!
He didn't really hear a loud noise.
Okay.
He didn't hear any noise, which is an important part of it. So it just said, it was moving very quickly. Another triangular-shaped object. It didn't make any noise like a jet should make a noise. So the interesting part of this is just yet again another triangular craft. This person saying it was at about treetop level, so that's pretty small, that flew over his car in the wilds of Georgia, Moultrie, Georgia.
Wow. The southern states, a couple of them, huh?
Yeah.
So is there anything else to talk about this week?
Nothing. Nothing at all.
Nothing at all. Wow.
No,
well,
I guess, those are all, those just a couple of sightings. That's about, otherwise, same old, no big news, but I'm sure if you looked at the tabloids, you would find something extraordinary. Aliens eating the heads off of innocent bystanders here and there, or some craziness.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. How you what you commented on earlier, that we just have to keep our side of the road clean, basically, and you can't control tabloids or anyone that is trying to make a splash out there, and it's too bad. It just muddies the waters as far as people taking this whole thing seriously or not. It's too bad. It's the way it is.
Yeah. What can you do except for what we try to do, which is try to lay down the information and what we know out there with sources and credibility. Because really the silliness kind of, it can stick around. Mythologies do stick around. So at least there is a source for something more credible. And I know I get feedback that people appreciate that. So Thank you very much to the people who do contact us and do appreciate that, because it's harder to look for the facts and to research and find sources than it is just to make stuff up or make assumptions.
Yeah, that's the easy road. Yeah, all right, man. Well, thanks a lot, and we'll be talking to you next week.
Thank you. Talk to you next week.
All right, everyone, hang in there for this quick music break. We'll be right back with Ben Moss and Tony Angiola. Ben and Tony, how are you?
Hey, man, how's it going?
Good. Ben, you there?
I'm here.
Hey.
He's coming out of his role.
Let's see, I've met you guys a couple of times, haven't I? I think both 2 years in a row out in Phoenix.
Yeah, at least a couple, 2 or 3 times, right?
Yeah, we'll be out there again.
We'll see you out there in February.
Yeah, I can't wait. Such a nice.
This time we're gonna really do an interview with you. Then only we're gonna do the interviewing.
Yeah, you're doing a show now. Actually, we did. You and I, the three of us, kind of clowned around and did like a couple of interviews. But you've actually built on that a little bit and are doing some type of video. What is it that you're doing exactly?
Yeah, we call it the UFO guys, and we got our first sample up on our website at www.mufonva.com. You can click on pictures or click on new pictures. It'll take you straight to the page that we now have the new pictures from Greensboro, North Carolina, where Ben interviews Travis Walton, Nick Redfern, and Tom Reed.
Ah, okay. And by the way, that's Tony that's speaking right there. And you guys are a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun hanging out with you. That was just a blast. And
that's what heavy drinking and drugs will do.
I'm not sure how much of a part of that I was, but anyway, I observed.
What was Martin's doing?
The Advils and the aspirin.
Yeah, that's right. Flintstone vitamins is about as heavy duty as I get these days.
You can't go wrong when you're talking about anal probes and implants, right?
I think that's what it was. So, moving right along here, you guys, you got really into. Now, actually, we met also at Ray Stanford's house back in. Was it? I want to say 2014, or was it 2015? Maybe 2015.
I think it was early 2015 or late 2014. I can't remember, but yeah, it was a good time. You did your show from there.
Yeah, that's right. It was so blistering hot. Remember that? Yeah. But you were really now. You had when I had talked to you, you were going to Ray's all the time. You're not. How long does it take you to get there? You're not that far away, right?
We're about 45 minutes away, roughly. We took a break lately because I've been studying, Ben's been working, and Ray's been working with Goddard on the new on the Goddard slab.
Yeah, and what the Goddard slab is basically dinosaur tracks, and there's all kinds of discoveries in this one great big slab. It's real important, and there's really not much to say right now until it's going to be a scientific paper published and everything else. There's going to be a lot of publicity, but Ray doesn't really want anyone to talk about it yet. But he has done, it's funny, either looking at UFOs up in the sky or looking down on the ground, he's got a real keen eye to catch these dinosaur tracks, and it's really, he's gotten quite a great worldwide reputation. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, when he had that Washington Post reporter that wrote that article about him in 2012, Ray dragged him down to the creek behind his house and found some dinosaur bones down there by the creek. And the guy was just really impressed. He kept picking up things going, "Is this a dinosaur bone?" And Ray's like, "No, that's mud." But yeah, he proved it when he was out with this guy. I think they found a claw or something from a nodosaur. It's pretty interesting.
Wow, amazing.
He also has he's got that amazing collection of pre-Columbian artifacts and vessels, and probably the largest, better than the Smithsonian has, I believe.
Yeah, when the Smithsonian guy comes over, he always says he's got a better collection than he has back at the Smithsonian.
Wow, yeah. It is being in the I am slightly involved in ancient arts, ancient pre-Columbian pieces, and I do a lot of appraisals. Working on one right now, actually, Peruvian and all. But it was just fascinating, really fascinating to go to his place. But Socorro, you have, I don't want to say taken the reins, but you've actually taken a strong interest in keeping that story alive. And you've done presentations, more than one, on this, haven't you?
Yeah, we just got back from Orlando. We did a presentation there of the Socorro landing, which a lot of people misunderstand and call it the Socorro crash. We have to always correct people and remind them that it was a landing that a police officer witnessed and saw take off. It was at the 2016 MUFON Symposium, and we had a good time. It was a great turnout. We saw Alejandro down there. A lot of old friends we haven't seen in a while, and we also filmed. I forgot about that. We filmed with NASA's Unexplained Files on the Discovery Channel. They haven't released those episodes yet.
The new season.
So I think it's the next season, which might be season 5. I think it is, and they're going to hopefully, give us a heads up. We'll put links up on our website for those who want to directly access those episodes.
Just to let the live listening audience know that I'm not able to take phone calls this evening. I had to switch my Skype address. We had trouble with them. I don't know what's going on with my regular Skype account, but had to switch to a different Skype account to get this show. I mean, we just barely came on the air, just barely made it live. However, if later on, if you wanted to Skype, all you have to do is the contact name is Podcast UFO. For the Skype name, but I don't have a Skype number attached to this particular Skype account, so no phone calls, but you could Skype in if you wanted to. You can also go in our chat room at podcastufo.com. It's a real easy one-click sign-up or two-click sign-up, and you can pose questions. We have a couple of new people in there tonight. You can pose questions for Tony and Ben as we go along. Something new I've talked about recently is I reopened after getting over-spammed, I've reopened the forum. And the forum used to be real active when it first started. I have a forum in there where you can actually pose questions for our guests, and we have a couple of questions that will be coming up for our guests. You can also email me questions if you choose. I'd rather get the forum going, but if you want to email me, that's martin at podcastufo.com. So... When you have been looking, now I know you actually went to Socorro because I remember we talked about that, and you have really been looking deeply into this case. Are there any new revelations that you have found? But first of all, before we get into any of that, can you, for the listener that is not real familiar with Socorro case, which it does seem to come up quite a bit on this show as one of the most substantial cases out there with such a great witness, Lonnie Zamora. Can you, in a nutshell, one of you, Tony or Ben, talk about what actually happened at Socorro back in, I want to say 1965. I might be wrong. What's the date?
1964, April 24th.
All right. So go ahead, one of you, if you can tell the listening audience exactly what happened.
Lonnie Zamora was on random patrol. A speeder passed him. He started following the speeder, and as he went out on this road that we drove down, we drove the route that we think he took. But he saw a blue flame and something crossing the sky. There was a roaring sound. So he started following that. He didn't know what was going on, but with the roar, he knows that this thing was near the dynamite shack, so he was worried that maybe that thing, there might be some trouble. So he went up this road, which is really bad. I beat my rental car when we went up it, but and it's the same today as it was then. He goes up the road, takes him 3 tries. He crests a hill. Right before he crests the hill, he sees an object with 2 figures next to it, small figures. At first, he thinks it's a overturned van or something. Then when he gets up over the hill, he sees it's a white egg-shaped object on 4 landing struts. And the 2 small beings he saw next to it had disappeared, and he heard 2 slams like an inner and outer hull door slamming. And then the object started roaring again, and Lonnie hit the dirt, and then he got back up, and the object became silent, retracted its 4 landing gear. He saw a symbol on the side, which we've been going back and forth with Kevin Randall on the symbol. But anyway, it lifted up and then turned silent and started heading towards the Perlite Mills and Socorro, the mountain range, and accelerating all the while. And, so a police officer reported it right away. Another police officer showed up. We think he saw it too. But what's interesting when you asked about updates, we We did find that there was the police had talked about another landing of this craft near the canal in Socorro. Then we got Kevin Randall involved, and Kevin, there were some things that we say in our presentation, we just don't have time to go into the details. So he checked on the fact that 3 people did report seeing the blue flame before Lonnie's account happened, and he actually found that Holder had said that was true. They just didn't make police reports. And then he got a hold of Murano, where Bob Mercer, the Ohio State MUFON gentleman, got those files as kind of blue book files that were missing from the whole case files. And so we got a hold of those. And so Kevin Randall actually got a hold of Lieutenant Murano, who those files came from, to make sure he found out he was alive, first of all, but he wanted to make sure that the provenance was there, that these were actually blue book notes, and turns out they were not part of the files, but they were probably written by the blue book people. So there's a lot of,
before we go on,
a lot of things
like separated from where there wouldn't be any access to it, or what do you mean by that?
Well, as Ray would say, there's a lot of details missing from the official report. The fact that Lonnie hit the ground, there's a lot of things missing. The blue flame, the evidence, the metal in the rock that was found. There's just so much that was missing that these could have been notes that they just didn't want in there, or were written by people and never associated with the file. But the box of material you got was very interesting. It had footage, old UFO footage. I think the original Tremington footage from, I think that was Michigan, of the object flying really fast in the sky. So Kevin did a really good job. He's a pretty thorough guy of verifying a lot of the data that we came up with, and there were some new things that have come about. All the police officers admitted that they had seen this object. They just didn't report it because they saw the way that Lonnie Zamora was treated.
Mm-hmm. Someone just posted on the message board, why would a ET craft use propulsion that produced a blue flame? That's just plain stupid. What's your comment?
That's as stupid as a stupid does. But how do we know? Why wasn't it red? Why wasn't it green? It's like blue seems to be indicative of.
I think any flame at all is what he was getting at, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily a flame. We call it a flame because that's how it was described. But it's quite likely that it could have been like the release of a subatomic particle venting, so to speak, because this flame, it knifed into the ground, slicing a creosote bush, right in half, and it takes a lot of heat to do that, and it kind of changed the soil a little bit there, because even when Ben and I went to visit the Ground Zero area, we noticed that where the flame was reported, the sand was noticeably different, like brighter white. It almost felt a little bit different. Then people were asking us, why don't you bring some of that back? And it's funny because it's like you get wrapped up in the moment and stuff, and like there's really nothing to discover. Other than the fact that the texture feels a little bit different, it looks a little bit different than the surrounding soil. But there's no radiation left there. There's really nothing to really analyze. But that's why it was blue, because that's what it was reported. Lonnie did a really good job reporting that it was blue. We can only speculate that it was possibly subatomic particles being released. There's a roaring sound. There's a different drive, it seems like, when it reached a certain elevation, because it went completely silent, went against the wind that was gusting up to 40 miles per hour towards the Perlite Mill. So there's a lot of really interesting facts, and he reported a lot of this immediately in Spanish. Right after the craft had left. And
on a radio show or something, right, too?
You mentioned that on Walter Schroed, a radio show, but he was on the CB radio back to, his headquarters when he was talking about what he had seen.
Yeah.
Plus, let me add that, just like when we go to the moon, we have one craft that gets us there and another one with, maybe two different types of propulsion to get you to land and take off. But the Socorro craft was a blue knifing, probably more like what a photon engine would look like. It was not a propellant-based propulsion, so it pretty much ruled out any type of black project or anything. And most people assume it was the lunar module, but the lunar module didn't have an internal engine in '64. There were no black projects. The FBI, CIA, and White House were all asking Hector Quintanilla he gave him top secret clearance so he could go to all these bases because he thought this thing was in a hangar in the base somewhere. And Lieutenant Holder, Captain Holder, was uprange commander at White Sands. He knew it was flying around there. Bell Labs, Hughes Aircraft, all these companies said it's not ours. We didn't have anything flying that day. So by process of elimination, our conclusion was it's a non-human event. We just don't know where it came from or what it was. But the technology is still something that, with those characteristics today, we don't build crafts like that. We don't have crafts that can do that. We don't have, as Ray would say, midgets as black project pilots. So there's a lot of things about the case that just never added up. Plus, it's still an unknown. It was never solved. And Hector really, really wanted to solve it, and he hoped it was a black project, but he never found evidence of that. So the blue flame, I think if you've ever seen a plasma engine, that's what it probably looked like, which is not really a flame at all. It's like a blue beam almost.
That's I agree with that. Now, everyone that has ever been on the show has all said the same thing, that the witnesses do not get better than Lonnie Zamora. And I know that he mentioned that Ray Stanford's book, oh God, I'm going to get it wrong. Flying Saucer in the Pentagon Pantry?
Socorro Saucer in the Pentagon Pantry.
Yeah, thank you. Ray's book was Lonnie Zamora told his daughter that was the best account that anyone had written about what actually happened. Now, I do want to talk to you about, you just mentioned a few minutes ago, about the symbol on the side, because it seems like that's been, I don't want to say a bone of contention, but it's been something that's been focused on a lot over with Ray and Holder's son involved, I believe, and a few other people. It's been kind of controversial, and I understand that Lonnie had written down the symbol, I guess, right shortly after the incident, and then he was told a few days later to change the symbol so there wasn't any type of copycat or any type of situation where someone could say hoax something or say that they witnessed it when indeed the symbol would be different. So that being said, have you come to any solid conclusion about what the symbol actually was?
Yeah, there've been a lot of people getting really heated about the symbol. And the first thing I want to say about it is, the symbol's not that important, because what is important is that something amazing did happen that's obviously otherworldly. But, they like to, nitpick little things like the symbol and which one was it. How about the fact that there was a symbol? There was something seen on the craft, that this amazing thing happened, it landed, it took off. Look at all the facts, all the hard evidence that is very reliable. The symbol was obfuscated, obviously, if you really, just put your detective hat on to, detect hoaxers and people calling in saying, I saw it too. And if they described the wrong symbol, then the Air Force would know not to waste their time investigating that. The fact of the matter is that everybody knew what Lonnie saw because he told everybody, he drew it for people. Even Walter Schrode knew that it was an inverted V with 3 lines through it. Lonnie was drawing in on napkins, and everyone in town knew what it was. And then the Air Force came up with this whole thing about using a different symbol for those reasons. And then even Ray initially thought that the inverted V with the 3 lines through it was incorrect, and he even documented it in his report saying that this is the wrong symbol, and then later changed his mind when he realized that the official symbol that Lonnie had to sign, before he signed that little drawing that he did not make, that was not done in his handwriting, it was only his signature. Before that symbol came about, everyone was already talking about an inverted V with 3 lines through it. So this umbrella-looking arch-shaped thing with an arrow in it and all that elaborateness, that's not the right symbol. And we've been going in circles about this, and everyone's getting all fired up about it. But I like to say is, don't worry about it. Don't worry about the symbol, exactly what it was. That's not what we should be focusing on.
I think it was a radiation symbol. I don't think it was, it could have been the V was showing the location of the thruster, and the 3 bars are a universal symbol for radioactivity. It was red. Red is a universal symbol for probably danger because red is hot, fire is red, things that hurt you are red. But
I think it was an Eda Joe's symbol, galactic version of it.
Yeah, Hynek drew the symbol in the archives that Ray found, inverted V with 3 bars also. I don't know how you could come up with that if the other symbol was a true symbol. Holder admitted to his son that he had Lonnie change the symbol. So I just think that this, there's a couple things wrong with this little scrap of paper. First of all, it looks like the corner of a newspaper, and Lonnie had, police dispatch paper and note paper and all kinds of different things that he would have drawn it on. I think that he probably drew the right symbol, but then they said no and tore a piece of paper and said, we're going to draw the symbol, you sign it. And as an Army veteran, you need to, follow what we say and be, patriotic. So we could be wrong, but I think the evidence points more towards the inverted V with 3 bars. And what's interesting is that symbol doesn't really show up anywhere in any type of alchemy or ancient symbols. There are things that are close, but I think it just might be a danger, don't stand here, a radiation type thing on the side of the craft.
How deeply did you search that symbol, like through, like trademarks and things like that as well?
Well, yeah. It showed up in several newspapers days after the event. Astropower looks surprisingly, the Astropower symbol, what they were trying to find out if that was what Lonnie saw. That looks a lot more like this fake symbol they drew. And Astropower, as we were investigating, ended up not making any craft. They just made software. There was no symbol like that ever used on a vehicle that has ever been built. We usually put the American flag on our space vehicles. But, there's inverted V's and there's inverted V with a dot in it, and there's things that are close, but nothing like that. And I just think it's a simple warning, or, it could be their national symbol or something, but from a practical standpoint, I think it's a warning about where that thruster is. Because it did radiate the ground for one day. There was fog film, and we did show a clip from Ray's video that he gave us permission to show where Hynek says the film was indeed fogged, and that's why they didn't return it to Ted Jordan after he took the pictures with his Polaroid. And then the next day there was no radiation. So you're talking about unusual radioactivity with a very short half-life, and I don't know much radioactivity that would behave like that. Fog film one day and the next day have nothing at all there.
Now, Ray often is listening to the show, and he's probably listening this evening. I don't know if you've spoken to him recently, but I would guess that he's probably listening. But
Hi, Ray.
Hey, Ray. Yeah. The visit that I had down there, I saw, and I believe it was something like 120 days later after the incident, he went to the dynamite shack, the landing area, and for perspective, he had a friend that was with him stand near the dynamite shack and took a picture. So he was looking through these the different Socorro pictures just, I don't know, a couple of years ago or something like that.
I think 2005.
And something caught his eye, and he blew up in the picture. He never noticed it before, but blew up in the picture. And I saw this with my own eyes. It really looks like exactly what people were saying. Lonnie Zamora said the craft looked like in the air above the dynamite shack over, in the distance. Right. I'm sure you saw this picture. I wanted to get your thoughts.
Oh, we've seen this picture many times, and we're not allowed to be excited about it anymore. Ray downplayed it the last time he was interviewed, but he's going to kill me for saying this. But, Ray, we are just as excited as you are about it, and we understand why you're downplaying it. But he is
out
a
of
very
caution?
meticulous. Yeah, he is. He's so careful. Before Ray's credibility is very important, and he wants to make sure that it is in fact, what it appears to be before he releases it, and before he gets too excited about it, or before he lets us get too excited about it. Even though he'll probably tell you that we're too excited about it already. But I understand why he's doing that, because he wants to make sure that, when he gets the negative and compares it to the print, that there's no aberrations or smudges or anything that it could possibly be.
That showed up in another picture.
Because, he had another photograph that, was suspected to be something interesting, and it turned out to be just a strange artifact of a processing of the film and the print and all this. But the very distinctive, and you saw this, what was very distinctive about this photo is that the object in the sky looks very reminiscent to what Lonnie described, and it had legs coming off of it.
That's right.
And then in the and it was egg shaped. I mean, it was exactly the way.
It was tilted. It wasn't flying aerodynamically.
Exactly. It was.
Even if an egg could fly aerodynamically.
Right. It was tilted, just like Lonnie mentioned. It was tilted on the ground.
There are two of them.
So, and also in the distance, there's other objects that are further out. So the object with the legs down is about a half a mile away, and then the other objects are about 2 miles further away. But it's an amazing photograph. I look forward to the day when Ray can say that conclusively that it is what it is, and we can talk about it again. As a matter of fact, it was your podcast radio show when he first, I think, talked about it, right?
I think so.
That's when
he did on Knapp's show also.
Yeah, on George Knapp's show too. But that was when the blog went bananas, and Ben was fighting with people for like months about it, and I kind of wish that it was never mentioned, because it wasn't something we could just.
Some of them are listening tonight.
Please don't hate us. We're just doing the best we can.
Yeah, the picture itself is a confirmation to me that Lonnie was incredibly accurate, because his description is right on. It's about probably 12 feet long, egg-shaped. You can see several of the struts coming out off of it. I don't think that's an artifact, and it's only 0.6 miles from the camera. But if that's really is an object in the sky, then Lonnie was very accurate. The event probably happened exactly like he said it did, because he was a pretty upstanding guy. He thought that, I think he talked to his priest right after. He thought it was demonic. And Chavez was convinced it was a black project, both of which it didn't turn out to be. But it's just confirmation, kind of a lucky thing. And if he did capture that in the background, it's just like the police officers said. The things were flying around all the time in this time frame. And what's interesting is the place that disappeared up into the perlite mills and the mountains up there, that area is owned by the Army. It's off limits. It's not talked about, but there's a gate around that whole area. You cannot get in there.
Ben met somebody that actually, I think, worked out there, right?
We met somebody in Florida that ran into Lonnie, and the guy was a radiation expert, and Lonnie was asking him if he possibly could have caught radiation. This was well after the event. And so the gentleman, heard the story for the first time, figured out the direction the thing went, drove up into the mountains because he worked at White Sands, and got denied when he ran into a gate. And turns out that whole area up there is off limits to anybody but the military.
Gee, that almost makes you wonder. I don't know how this thing could possibly be military in 1964. It just doesn't make any sense, but it makes you wonder, being that close to a base, especially a one-off, a protected base like that.
Well, maybe if they were landing and coming out of that area, maybe they found something really interesting and decided to grab the whole area and explore why they may have been using that as a base. That's just speculation on my part, but there might be something unusual up there. You never know. There is uranium in that area. I don't know if there was a big pocket up there, but they were there for some kind of reason. So maybe one of the reasons is up in those mountains.
It always makes me wonder about hotspots. You hear about hotspots and what makes a UFO show up the same place, multiple times. It's like a huge puzzle.
39th parallel. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, 39th parallel.
There's that swath of land that goes around the planet that seems to, it's a certain longitude and latitude that seems to...
Chuck Zukowski wrote a book on that.
Yeah, it seems to be a lot of activity within that band. I don't know if there's a lot of ley lines there or magnetic faults or whatever, but, there are areas that seem to be attractors, and... what kills me is when we get cases where people go, this shows up all the time, and they're not filming it. They're using a cell phone to take pictures. Like, come on, man. You got for me to really want to come out there and look at this thing closely, you got to send me some film.
That reminds me of a quick segue, if you don't mind. We recently ran into our friend Chris Bledsoe Sr. in North Carolina. He showed us some really interesting photographs he took on his cell phone, and like Ben just said, he's one of those folks that are saying these things are happening all the time on his property, so we're going to make plans hopefully soon to investigate that area and see what we can find.
Oh, interesting. How far away are you from Bledsoe?
5 hours, or 4 hours. 5 hours.
Yeah, it's not a short trip.
Yeah, it was a journey.
So anybody who wants to help us out, we do have a donate button on our website for PayPal. Pay for some of our gas.
We passed Chapel Hill on the way, so it's a haul.
Wow. The picture we're not supposed to talk about, I just want to talk about a little bit more.
The picture that shall not be renamed.
Yeah. I was at Ray's for 2 days and saw some incredible things, but I got to tell you, of all the things that I saw at his house, that blew me away.
Oh, absolutely. It's the coup de grace of that case. I mean, it's just amazing.
Well, his footage that we haven't seen, we've seen the PowerPoint from the airplane of the mothership. I mean, that's I just keep wanting to see that footage, but I fear that old emulsion film is just, fading away with time. But
yeah, we tried to watch a couple of old films, and unfortunately, due to time, the chemicals must have faded on it, and it was something that was caught in just a few frames. It was very quick, and we played it back a few times. We bought 2 different projectors, and unfortunately, we just couldn't see anything. And Ray says he might have some more copies of it, but he hasn't had a chance to find it yet because he's been so busy with his Goddard work.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if we could just digitize everything, and that way you can get a better analysis done on the things he has. But time keeps going by, and I just fear every day they're fading. It's just like old photographs. I'm at the age now when I look at my old photographs from when I was a teenager, they don't look like they used to.
I know. I mean, I think time is going by so fast. Imagine what it must be like for Ray. It's like he's so sharp that he's got memories like they just happened yesterday.
I know. He's amazing. So one of the things also is in the chat room and also in the forum, there's a question that's actually aimed at Ray, and that's why is he waiting to release these pictures?
It's got to do with having time to find the original negative and make sure that what's on that negative is in fact the same information that's on the print.
Yeah. I do understand that, and that was just, I know he's very busy with this dinosaur tracking thing right now to get involved in that. But that is, I just hope someday he does have the time to dig in there.
Yeah, really soon. I mean, it's at the top of his list. I believe in the new year, come January, we're going to get reignited with all the UFO work and hopefully make some new discoveries.
Yeah. So also in the forum, there's a question, and you sort of talked about Rob Mercer, who has actually been on the show. And this person wanted to know, do the Blue Book files that were obtained by Rob Mercer reveal anything significant about the Socorro case? I know you touched on it, but was there anything in particular that was unknown or anything that came out of that?
Well, there were a lot of interesting notes. There was some bad spelling. There were hastily written, probably while the guy was talking on the telephone. But the notes did show, they did draw the inverted V with 3 bars in the notes. So that's another source of that. There was speculation that would be answered, like they were saying, what about this guy Liney? And then, no, we found him to be a very credible witness. He wouldn't make this up. In fact, he's sorry he even spoke about it. And a lot of just thoughts that people were writing down that kind of follow the case deeper than what was reported officially. It's more like, running notes as people were looking at documents. And, I mean, it had the request from the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Hynek was also, there were some notes of Hynek's in there. He was baffled. Why did the Joint Chiefs of Staff keep calling up Lonnie and wanting to visit Lonnie? And it just shows, the notes show how confused they were. There was one note, can we call it a hoax? I think Dr. Menzel asked that, and Hynek was like, no, we can't call it a hoax because hoaxes don't leave holes in the ground and radiate film. But there were just these notes about follow-ups and things they were doing, and every one of the notes came to the conclusion that they didn't know what the heck it was. And it's very interesting because even Hector was determined. We do have all the documents that show that the White House had inquired, that they had granted him the security clearance to go into White Sands and all these bases and look through hangars. But it's more of a running storyline of how they were looking at things, what they found out, what they determined wasn't true or wasn't real, and it just gave greater mystery to it because they never found an explanation. They really wanted to. I mean, if it had been a black project, trust me, they would have announced it and closed the books on the case. But instead, it's still an unknown to this very day.
Do you think they would have actually? It's kind of one of those almost on the borderline of national security to release that it was a black project. Do you think they would have actually said that?
Look what they did with Roswell. They came out and said it was a mogul balloon. They would have easily.
It took a long time though for that. Before
but they would have made something up. They could have made something up and just dismissed it. There was no black project. I mean, if they had black projects of this capability in '64, we would certainly be seeing some documentation of something like that now, because everything built in '64 we've seen.
You think that by 1964, the Air Force would have had their their stories ready to go, to for cover-ups and whatnot. I think it caught them off guard, really.
And one thing we showed in our presentation, we added this clip that I found online of this kind of bulbous-looking craft that was made to land on foreign objects. This is a video from 2010, and it's spewing a propellant. It lifts off, it tilts over, and it blows up. And that's in 2010. So if we had something in '64 with these characteristics, there's no way we'd be spending millions of dollars on this propellant-type asteroid lander that blew up after getting 6 feet off the ground. It just doesn't make any sense.
Not very perfected. There's someone in the message board earlier mentioned sort of a connection between the Cash Landrum case. Now, that one in particular, I don't know if you looked into that deeply or not, but that, to me, has a real feel of a man-made vehicle.
Yeah, it was followed by Chinook helicopters. It was not operating well. It was almost like something we were trying to make work, and it just wasn't doing it. And then it killed the poor woman.
It was obviously leaking radiation for sure.
Yeah, and the fact that it was followed by helicopters, probably they were supposed to follow it on some other path, and it got wacky, and all of a sudden they're chasing it. And what's interesting in Cash Lundgren is when she complained to the Air Force and went out there, when they were talking to her in a room, there was a big map on the board, and there was one red pin in exactly the location that she saw the craft.
I never heard that part.
That's true. I know the case well.
Ah. Wow. I actually had Colby on a while ago. And also that's in the archives if anyone's listening and wants to check that out. Colby Landrum it's one of his very few interviews. I can't remember what episode it was. It was, I think, 3 years ago on this on podcastufo.com. But he was such a young kid, at the time. I can't remember how old he was, but he was, 3 or 4 years old, or maybe a little bit older than that. He does remember it.
Like a little older, like 8 maybe.
I thought he was 5.
Yeah. Anyway, pretty young, but he remembers, going underneath the dashboard. And, luckily for him, he got out of the radiation compared to his aunt that, like you said, didn't last too long afterwards.
Yeah, she got it. She got it pretty bad.
Right. In the forum, also, there's a question and it has again to do with the Socorro case. And the person wants to know, and I was not aware of this, and I've never heard Ray say anything about it, but it says, has Ray's second rock been analyzed yet? What can you tell us about the significance of this rock? Are you aware of another rock?
The rock that we've, it's only one rock, and it had a lot of metal fragments on it. The biggest piece of metal, which was rolled up, we have photographs of it, and we have that shown in our presentation. That piece of metal fell off during transfer, and it was never located. But the remaining amount of metal, Goddard scraped cleanly off to analyze it. And I don't know if many people listening right now are too familiar with that or not, but Dr. Frankel did the analysis on it, and he was really excited about what he found because he was checking it against the periodic table and found including all the known elements, including Russia. I guess that was significant. They couldn't really determine how the metals were bound. It was a zinc iron alloy. And we also showed a clip when Ray's talking to Hynek in our presentation where he talks a little bit more in depth about what Frankel discovered. But what was interesting was that Dr. Frankel kind of disappeared from the whole case after a few days that went by, and Ray was trying to reach out to him. And then earlier this year, Ray is friends with a lot of people at Goddard, and they know him from his paleontological work with dinosaur bones and fossils. And one guy called him up, the scientist called him up earlier this year and said, "Oh, by the way, did you hear about what happened to Dr. Frankel?" Not knowing that Ray had worked with him in the past. And Ray was inquiring about that, saying, what happened to Dr. Frankel? He says, it turns out he was sent to the woodshed for working on a UFO rock, in the past. And so it was interesting confirmation that, gave Ray a little bit of, I guess more into the mystery as to what happened to Dr. Frankel, that he was actually kind of blocked, from the rest of the case. And so,
yeah, the other part of the rock is that there's a crystal that's melted, a kind of a green crystal that doesn't seem to be melted by natural processes. It could have been a factor of the heat. If that flame went over that rock, it might have cooked this crystal and melted it. So there is something to look at there. If it's a crystal that requires 2,000 degrees to be liquefied, then there might still be some type of evidence on the rock as to this propulsion's capabilities.
And Ray fully intends to have it analyzed, but as you can imagine, he won't let it out of his sight. It's not something that he can ship off or send away because it probably will never come back. So he found some place in another state, we can't say where, that will actually do this work in front of him, and it's a place that he trusts, and it's just a matter of, getting the money together and getting out there and getting it done.
Right, wow. And also the heat of the flame set a creosote bush on fire as well. At least one bush, right?
It sliced it in half. It takes, I think, a couple of thousand degrees to do that in that time frame. Just like the vitrified sand that may or may not have been there. Sand vitrifies, I think, 2,200 degrees. But the creosote bush, those things, they're not easy to burn. And the one that is in the famous picture was sliced in half as that craft moved over the.
I think it was described as smoldering. It wasn't like in flames. It wasn't like flaming when they came upon it. When Ted Jordan and Lonnie and all them were, it was just still smoking. So it was hot, but not hot to the touch, right?
Yeah, if it just flew over and was able to do that, like an acetylene torch, that tells you there was an incredible amount of heat generated by whatever that first form of propulsion was. Because when the craft lifted up and went silent, the blue flame was not coming out anymore, and it flew off silent. So once again, it's one engine to land you and bring you up with the two roars, and then another engine to operate maybe in the upper atmosphere or outside of the atmosphere.
Yeah. Now, I want to talk about the Bragalia. I can't remember how you say his name.
Anthony Bragalia?
Yeah. And how he says this whole thing was hoax, and he exposed it, and it was a college prank and all that. I mean, that is so far from what happened. Didn't he say like there was a screen, film screen put out and like a video or something? I mean, it's just such a bizarre story.
Yeah, that's bananas. If anybody's ever been out there, what you'll notice, first of all, is that there's no easy way to get to that spot, and there were no footprints anywhere. If they were using a balloon, it would take a lot of people to stabilize it and then to release it in a 40-mile-an-hour wind that this craft went against. Well, the balloon would have gone in the other direction. There's no way that a balloon that large is going to fly against a 40-mile-an-hour gust of wind, and there'd be footprints everywhere, and there's just no way of knowing when Lonnie was going to be there anyway. He was on random patrol.
Yeah, the only footprints were the two prints near where the craft, the ladder had come down or something, but there's nowhere to hide there. There's absolutely no way it could have been students. That was just a guess on his part. The whole student thing can be easily disproved by the fact that you had probably 11 witnesses in all that heard the noise. You had the 3 witnesses before Lonnie's event started that reported the blue flame heading towards Socorro. You had the 2 brothers driving down the road that saw its exit. You would have to have coordinated such a thing, and then you'd have to fly off into the wind and radiate the film. It's just no way. That the hoax theory is dead in the water because the evidence shows that there's absolutely no way you could have hoaxed this thing.
Well, not only that, Socorro is not like a big metropolitan area either. It's it's kind of like a small town, isn't it? Am I getting that right?
It's a small town. I'll tell you what, they got the best burgers and steaks we've ever had. That Bodega Burger. There's a plug for you.
Yeah, the one of the things about the so-called hoax was they were trying to draw tourists. They were going to make this site, and none of that is true. This road's still unpaved. There is the Lonnie Zamora Memorial, which we had to pull the
it was covered in tumbleweeds
away just to photograph it.
Well, what's that like? Is that like a stone?
It's monument? It's like a water return thing.
It's like a cement kind of like a dam looking.
Somebody painted Lonnie on it and put the dates of the famous incident. I mean, it's a tribute to him, but it's certainly not a tourist attraction because you can't. If you didn't know where it was,
I believe it takes tourists to have a tourist attraction.
Yeah,
and there weren't any tourists because we were the only tourists.
When we got a hold of the editor of the Defensor Chieftain, and he
had a hard time finding it.
The owner of the land gave him permission to bring us to the site. It took him 35, 40 minutes to find the site. He finally had to get out and wander.
We passed it twice.
Yeah, there was just no way we wouldn't have found it if we didn't have him with us. Yeah. Plus, we would have been trespassing.
The Dynamite Shack, I assume, is long gone?
Long gone.
Yeah.
We took pictures. I did a panoramic of the whole area where we parked our car right where Lonnie's car was, and the interesting thing is it is a little bold depression there. So if you wanted to land and not be seen from the ridge line, which is far away, that was a good place to do it because there was only flat area around there. And but again, with the hoax theory, there's just nowhere to hide. You'd have to run about a quarter of a mile in any direction before you could get over this crest that would hide that site from you.
Well, and before I forget
Go ahead.
I was going to say, before I forget, the listeners, if they want to read a little bit about it, we have a link on our website that says Socorro right on the front page of MUFON VA, and also a link to Ray's book on there.
Oh, okay. So there's a depression, and also I'm sure that Braggiola, however, I can't say his name right, but I'm sure he never really visited the site himself, probably.
No,
I don't think
Nobody ever investigated this. When we were there, the guy said there were 2 gentlemen that claimed they were the students. And so I immediately said, well, where are they? We'll interview them. Well, one's in the hospital. He won't talk to you. The other one moved out of town. It was just 2 guys trying to get their 15 minutes of fame. That whole story is so ludicrous. If you actually went to the site and looked around and read all the newspaper articles and everything, you'd realize that there was just no way that is even possible. The multiple witnesses kind of, there's a timeline, and the guy that visited Opal Grinder Station, that saw the thing almost hit his car, and then he saw...
That was a family of 5.
Yeah, he saw Lonnie going...
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how would they have known that all these people were going to witness that? So I don't even like talking about it because it's so stupid. It doesn't make any sense. It's like with Roswell, people go, oh, that was a weather balloon, but that's all they remember.
Well, I'll tell you why I brought it up. I brought it up because if anyone is searching the Socorro case, they're going to find this, that it's a hoax. And I just wanted to get the word out there that is an absurd thing, and not to pay attention to it, really.
Yeah, they really need to do their homework.
They can buy our DVD of our presentation. We've got all the evidence there. I mean, we did 2 years on it. Ray did a lifetime on it.
Yeah, Ray's been doing this forever. Let's not forget that this is one of the 701 Project Blue Book unsolved cases to this day.
And the question, I think, is a fitting question on the forum as well. Do you feel the weight of the evidence on the Socorro case affected J. Allen Hynek personally, or that it may have influenced a change of opinion on his part of the subject of UFOs?
Yeah, J. Allen Hynek, this was the case that pushed him over the edge, that made him change his mind about swamp gas excuses. It was so moving for him, especially Lonnie Zamora as a witness. J. Allen Hynek was always saying what a credible witness Lonnie was and how honest he was. And this case in particular was the one that changed his mind about ufology and sent him in a different direction.
Yeah, he formed CUFOS afterwards. There were a couple of cases that helped, but this was one of the most evidential close encounters of the third kind. And in the notes, Hynek, you can tell he's really baffled. And even in Hector Quintanilla's book, the head of Project Blue Book, you can just feel his frustration at not being able to solve the case. And he had access to everything. He had top secret clearance. And the FBI, CIA, and the White House all wanted an answer. So there's no way that all the other agencies, even the Black Project agencies, could not answer their requests. So when Hector went to a base, he was allowed to walk anywhere he wanted to, and he was sure he was going to find this thing in a hangar somewhere. The only conclusion we could come to is if nobody on Earth admits to making that vehicle, having that capability, having midgets fly it, and had to answer the White House for these investigations, then it's not man-made. So if it's not man-made, what is it? Well, no way to know about that. An easy answer is ET, but you could be talking about some kind of parallel universe, or quantum theory postulates, I think it's 26 universes now, or 26 different realities. It could have been a lot of different things. The latest Drake equation is about 1 billion Earth-like planets in our own galaxy right now. Yeah, there's 2 trillion galaxies that we know of. That just expanded, It just, to me, and Tony also, the evidence showed that this was not a man-made craft. Didn't behave like one, didn't have pilots like one. There were no craft that had the capability of being that far off base, because the bases weren't close. White Sands testing ground was pretty far away. Like I said, the lunar lander wasn't even flying at the time. It was being dropped from a cable to test the landing struts. And the picture of the lunar lander, it's 2 dudes sitting in a lunar lander. It's not hard to see what it is. It's not egg-shaped. They're not 5 feet tall. So if you really look into the case and get past some of the hoax theories and dig down, what you see is evidence of something really bizarre and not normal or known to mankind.
Now, the main witness... Go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead. I was just going to say, and like Ben mentioned earlier, to this day, there's nothing that flies like that. There's nothing that can roar like that and then go completely silent and travel against the wind and then reach supersonic speeds in a short period of time at a strong angle the way that it did.
Yeah, when it goes silent, that's one that can't be explained for sure. The lead witness, Lonnie Zamora. I have my own thoughts, but I'd like for you to express, one of you to express, why was Lonnie such a solid witness?
Well, Lonnie, I mean, who knows? I mean, he's a really good guy. He was former military. He was in the Army. He was a police officer, and he took his job very seriously. He was just a down to earth guy, a family man. He's very honest and, true to his word. This is something that ruined his, in a lot of ways, in my opinion. I mean, some people might say it didn't ruin his life, but, he was being ridiculed, ever since this event took place. Little kids would tease him on the street. People would, say things to him out there, just kind of just poking him every day, to the point where he said, you know what, I'm not going to do this anymore. He ended up working at a gas station for a little bit, and then he went to work at the dump, I think, for a long time, right, Ben?
Yeah. The thing about Lonnie was he was a church-going man. He rarely drank. He was very religious. He didn't even think about UFOs. He was sorry afterwards he was sorry he ever brought it up. He said if he saw the damn thing again, he would never talk about it. So as a guy not prone to fiction.
Certainly wasn't seeking publicity.
Was a down to earth guy, was well known in the community as a stand up guy, and even Hynek's conclusion and Quintanilla said, he was probably one of the most credible witnesses we've had, because we believe that what he says, he believes, Yeah. And then, with the photo, you kind of have confirmation that what he saw is captured in that photo. And it's just, it's like just Joe Blow on the street, an honest, hardworking guy, sees something extraordinary, reports it, and then gets all kinds of grief about it. And then he's sorry he talked about it. But, I'm sure he didn't know the ramifications of what was going to happen. If he thought through it, he probably would have kept it to himself.
But, that's kind of a recurring theme, isn't it, Ben? Like, we see cases like the Hickson case, same kind of thing. He reports something, people start to trash him about it. He wishes he never brought it up again.
And that kind of solidifies the fact that a lot of the other officers said that they had seen the thing before and after this event. But they said, because of the way Lonnie is treated, we would never tell anybody except our fellow police officers about it.
Well, they said they saw it many times afterwards, and they said they refused to tell the Air Force ever again.
Yeah, they didn't like the way Lonnie was treated. They all hated the Air Force, the Blue Book guys, the military guys. They really didn't like them at all. Some of them didn't like Ray, but he was kind of a civilian investigator at the time, working for NICAP. But it's just one of those things where you have a credible witness seeing an incredible thing and probably reported it exactly as it happened, didn't embellish it at all, never embellished it later in life, didn't even want to talk about the creatures, and did very few interviews afterwards. If the guy was seeking publicity, he sure did a poor job of doing it.
Right. You touched on everything of my thoughts, especially the part where he was not seeking any type of notoriety, and he was scared too. That's one thing. He was. It really shook him up, this whole event.
Yep.
Yeah, they say he was like white as a ghost when Chavez showed up. He said he looked really physically shaken,
trembling, and.
Mm-hmm.
Now there is also controversy about. We want to call them little people, not midgets, but about the small beings. There's controversy whether. He mentioned them, and that he did mention them or didn't mention them. I mean, I've heard people say that, but I've always heard the story as he saw the two beings.
Well, he described them as figures. He said he saw two figures, and he described them as they were wearing white coveralls.
Yeah.
He never mentioned any facial features because he saw them at about 450 feet away. So as far as semantics goes, he described them as two figures and wearing what appeared to be white coveralls.
And they were standing next to a 5-foot creosote bush, and they didn't come up to the top of the bush.
About the size of a 10-year-old, right?
Yeah, less than 5 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But, that's just the added part to this case that really makes it even more mysterious. And and it is a good one. And, this having a witness like Lonnie is pretty rare. All the way through, especially, someone that is not on the circuit, so to speak, and never was.
Yep. Yeah. And one thing I can add is that as we were investigating, we did find, I think, 7 other incidents in the area in the same time frame of egg-shaped craft. There was actually a report of a egg-shaped craft with 4 landing gear landing on Hollerman. That didn't get a lot of publicity, but I found that in a newspaper article. And then there was another report of a pilot who said he saw the thing in the air, and he described it had a symbol of inverted V with 3 bars on it. And this was a military pilot.
Really? Wow.
So
what was the pilot flying? A plane or a helicopter?
No, he's flying a plane, but I think it was a military pilot, possibly flying his own Piper or whatever they had at the time. But the thing is, as we look deeper, there are some other cases that are similar, reporting a similar craft in that area in that time frame. And 64, had incredible amount of high-end UFO cases, and there was other events that might tie to that event. So trying to figure out how to plot all this on a map and to get the time frame right and look at these other stories and see how viable they are, then we can kind of put together maybe a timeline of where these things were going and coming from.
Yeah, one of the most amazing things about this case, Martin, is the more we dig, the more we find, even today, which is just amazing.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get feedback where people say, all you do is talk about old cases and rehash them. But I think that, your point you just made, Tony, I think when you dig deep, you're finding articles, which is used to do that through microfiche. Is it done differently now?
It's all on the internet.
Well, it's all on the internet, yeah. Well, we do have some microfiche that we need to get converted that we're borrowing from somebody. And hopefully we're going to maybe be able to dig through that a little bit and find some more corroborating evidence. But we're planning to go back to Socorro hopefully in February and do the same thing we did last time, is kind of start our trip up there, and maybe we'll be able to interview some people.
Did you attempt to do that? You didn't have time to do that last time.
No, it was we didn't have much time, and luckily Ben drove. He's a professionally trained IndyCar racer, and he was able to reach the speed of light in our rental car as it reached critical mass.
Yeah, with 9 hours from Socorro to Scottsdale, I think. But 60 West, that goes through Magdalena and Daytol. There's all cities with histories of UFO crashes and famous UFO sightings. So that whole corridor from Socorro out to Arizona is full of history.
As a matter of fact, we had a few pee breaks that we made some discoveries talking to people everywhere we stopped. And we would ask, have you guys seen any UFOs around here? And we just show them our badge, our official badge, in our cars. And they say, yeah, man, we see UFOs all the time. We got albums full of them. We're sick of them. We see these things all the time. So basically, it makes you want to, spend like a month there and just set up shop and see what you capture.
Wow. Yeah. It is, it's puzzling why there's just so much activity in that area. It really is. And you said earlier the 39th parallel. I'm not sure if I heard anyone else talk about that.
Yeah, that's there's a lot of cases across this area of the United States. I think I'm saying
a lot of cattle mutilations, from what I understand, in that 39th parallel.
And what's interesting is, they discover new things all the time. There's on one of the shows I saw right on this parallel, there were all these interesting formations and 4 huge formations, and now we found out that area was struck by multiple meteorites of great size way back in the past, and that's what created these formations right through the heart of the United States.
Wow. That is pretty interesting. We have another question on the board off this topic. And with your investigation work with MUFON, has there been any cases you were involved in that have had a profound emotional effect on witnesses? If so, did they influence you? Do you think human element sometimes gets missed from witness reports?
I've gotten several cases where, people get very emotional about what they think they witnessed. And the reason I say that is because, ufology today it's a real challenge. I mean, it's probably one of the hardest fields that you can, take part in, because there's so many different facets to it, from abduction and experiencers to spiritual people to, what Ben and I like to focus on is the hard evidence. You'll never hear us talking about, we're never going to speculate that something's an alien or that something is from some other world. unless we have that physical evidence, unless there's some kind of an alien sitting right in front of us and showing us their technology and giving us a ride. So we get a lot of people to speculate what they think they saw. If they see a light in the sky and they say they were emotionally affected, and then they have these dreams that, things happened to them and, and missing time, that could very well be true, but we're not qualified to hypnotize anybody. We're not qualified to speculate what happened to them. And there's people in MUFON that do specialize in that area. So we don't even try to pretend that we know that information, but we will, do our best to gather hard physical evidence and get things analyzed, photo analysis. We use, the tools like ELA and meta tag analyzers and, photo forensics and things like that to try and determine if a photograph has been manipulated, faked, recompressed, or what have you, trying to help that witness's testimony. Of course, we want to believe, but unless we have that real proof, and that's what we love so much about Socorro. There's just so much tangible evidence and so much, original photographs to work with, and then we have Ray. And so he's been a great resource for us. And that's one of the historical cases that we've just been immersed in because we have that access. We have, Ray at our back door to help us out with that.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Someone wanted to know what you thought about the whole UFO paranormal connection. Have you experienced anything like that? The connection between other paranormal activities and UFOs, I believe that's the question.
Well, I think there's what you could call a psychic connection. I think that if we're dealing with a civilization that's, 5,000, 500,000, 5 million, whatever years ahead of us, they would have the ability to probably monitor you on some type of personal level. I mean, if NSA can do it, certainly a race coming from somewhere else could do it. I think that they know when you're observing them. I think they know what you might be thinking. I think there's a psychic connection. That's why some people do seem to be attractors. But a lot of people, when they say, shoot, I got to grab my camera, that's when they disappear because they know you're grabbing a camera. I think there's some type of psychic connection that's not really psychic. It's just high technology. It's just something that we haven't imagined yet, but they probably know what you're thinking, what your actions are going to be. They know who's observing them. Because I feel with the technology they have, if they really, really didn't want you to see them, then you wouldn't see them. Mm. They probably do show themselves at times. There could be some type of mechanical issue, but maybe just to test what happens afterwards, to do a study, to, kind of like a field study. It could be students on a field trip for all we know. But they might appear for 5 seconds and disappear, and then, okay, how they react? What are they thinking? Did they?
One of my favorite cases is that one in Italy, in that remote region where the Catholic priests and the school children were watching that UFO, and the people aboard the UFO in the dome were like waving back and forth. That sighting was like a couple 10, 20 minutes long or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was there for like a day. Yeah, and they got so tired of looking at it, they went inside.
They went back inside,
came back out, and they were still on top of it.
Are you talking about the Father Gill case?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah,
that was
interesting stuff. But you had somebody that says, "Why do you talk about old cases?" Alejandro touched on the triangles, and he said red light at the base. I don't know if you meant red light in the center, but Virginia gets a lot of triangle reports, and when I hear white light on each corner, red light in the center, that to me sounds so much like a nuts and bolts military type vehicle. What's interesting is in one of Ray's PowerPoint, where these things seem to be coming off this larger craft and docking underneath it, they're triangle shaped, but they look like sports models. And this is from the 70s, and they're notched, triangle shaped craft. People don't realize that originally the Roswell crash was reported as a delta shaped craft. So that's something that could be coming out of larger objects that are flying aerodynamically, thus they have the delta shape, maybe using some more atmospheric type of propulsion. But I think here since the late 70s, early 80s, I think most of these triangles are military, and they sometimes fly them over. We had one go right down a highway in Richmond or near Richmond with some footage that clearly showed a triangle with a red light in it moving very slowly and silently. that to me is just too nuts and bolts. I think that's military black project.
And also, Martin, I was going to add to that I recently had lunch with an old friend of mine I haven't seen in 20 years, and I was talking about the Black Triangle crafts and things like this, and this person was telling me that at a young age, sitting with her father, there was a TV show that came on that talked about these black triangles, and he literally dropped his beer, and his mouth was just agape because he said, "That's the craft I worked on when I was working for civilian government." And he described how the thing flies by putting his hands out in three-dimensional space and touching like a flat kind of a control panel. And he also, described, some other intricate things about the craft, but she said that at a young age, she remembers seeing him go in and out of the house with a briefcase with handcuffs on, and he would disappear to different parts of the world. Just all of a sudden, like 2 days later, he was just gone for a week, kind of thing. So, not sure what he was doing for a living, but she did remember the day that he saw that on TV, and he was amazed that it was being shown.
Well, I have some questions since we're on this subject, because of the military connection. I think it's possible that some of these are military. Questions are, why would they be exposing these craft so often and all over the place in populated areas? That's one question. Another question is, if there was silent propulsion that could move a craft slowly overhead, it just seems like that couldn't be kept quiet as long as it has been. And there's I spoke to a girl at an auction gallery, I would say, 6 months ago or more, who she said, "Oh, I saw online you do a show on UFOs, and when I was young, back in like 1973, I think she said it was 73 in Massachusetts. She said that this big, huge triangle floated over our car, and my aunt got out and." She's telling me this whole story, all excited. She never really thinks about UFOs anymore, but, that's something that she saw. So if these craft are military, how could they be around, first of all, so long? And you talked to David Marler about that. And how could they be kept secret so long and that type of propulsion?
Well, we know the government is good at keeping secrets, and I always go back to the A-bomb that had maybe 10,000 people working on that project, and the Vice President of the United States knew nothing about it until they dropped one on Nagasaki. So the government can keep secrets. Usually when they show us military craft, like the SR-71 Blackbird, I mean, that thing was built a long time ago, and we didn't see it for a long time. There are other projects that when they show us something, usually it's old. It's not the latest technology. It's just the latest one they show us. And the silent triangles could be, they're, as far as what might be called the Aurora goes, or the TRB-3, that could be a dirigible type craft that, is flying on helium or something.
That's kind of a hoax, isn't it? I've heard that was a hoax.
Well, no, there was designs. I've seen designs for something because, we are going back to these lighter than air ships that don't blow up like the Hindenburg.
The one that looked like what's her name's butt?
Oh yeah, the Kardashian ship. But and that crashed also. But the thing with the military is that it could be an experiment. Well, let's fly this down the highway, see what people see. How easily does it get dismissed? How easily do people say you're crazy? You didn't see anything. And even the footage, could be photoshopped. There's just a lot of things. There are a lot of reasons why they would test. And they've done that before. They've tested things to see if people notice, see if it hits the news, see if it's kept quiet. It's easy to deny. They can always deny everything. That's not ours. We didn't fly that. We don't have anything like that. But they could be really doing, and it's just all a social experiment.
Here's another one. I had a listener. I haven't seen her. I haven't heard from her in a while. She's from Australia. Grew up in Australia. She's in her 30s now, and when she was around 8 or 9 years old, she was in the garden with her mother, and she felt this force that actually pushed her down on the ground. she couldn't really explain what it was, and looked up, and there was a big, huge triangle like floating over, and she felt like the force of it, and silent, completely silent. And this is going back, many years. It's hard for me to fathom that the military and different places. I also had an astronomer, amateur astronomer, used to be part of the show, who passed away last year. And his thing was he was carrying his telescope back to his house in England, and a huge. He also said it was huge, and you hear that a lot. Huge triangle, and now you say maybe a dirigible.
Trump is president, so you got to say it right. It's huge.
But so he saw this triangle float over, and then a question on the message board: why do they have navigation lights? Or would military experimental craft have navigation lights? Well, that's possible. Right.
It's hard to say. I mean, a lot of these, flying vehicles, like, the kind that you see, like in Close Encounters, they sure had a lot of lights, and they've been described that way. But I think that in our experience, the crafts that we have seen that are real, for lack of better words, they don't seem to have lights. They just distort the air around them. We see a lot of plasma type evidence that if there is a light, it's being emitted from that propulsion mechanism, so to speak. But I haven't really seen anything that has like Christmas lights or anything fancy like that. Or
one thing, especially working with Ray, is some of these they report portholes with lights, whereas that could be really some type of magnetic or plasma venting, because with plasma and some of the electromagnetic effects, you can create all kinds of colors that look like lights, but they're a factor of the propulsion and probably the material that these things are made of, and probably not metal, probably some type of ceramic conductive, whereas the whole ship might be conductive. But it's just, from what we've seen that Ray has of these triangles back in the 70s, they just don't look like these really sharp-edged triangles, black triangles that are being reported now. Those look
enormous.
Yeah, they look like they're constructed here, whereas the other ones were just so exotic-looking and so almost like built for tremendous speed that they just didn't look like something that we would make. The ones that are being filmed just look like a black project in the shape of a triangle. The SR Blackbird looks really weird when it's flying. A lot of these craft do. A lot of the stealth fighters look like discs on edge when they're coming towards you, and a lot of people did report triangles in the day when a lot of these planes were flying that are triangle in shape. Plus, you can have an airplane has a red, a green, and white light situated for navigation lights and landing lights, because I live near Dulles Airport, and in the distance, it looks like a triangle because the lights are in the shape of a triangle.
Now, we did have one reported triangle right by Dulles Airport, reported by a pilot on his way home. And, he knows what aircraft look like. He actually trains pilots, and he was just getting off the exit on Route 28 on a 66 west heading towards Manassas, and he reported seeing this black triangular craft with a red dome light in the middle, but no lights on the points. And each side of the craft, he was reported between 30 and 50 feet in length. Now, as far as black triangles go, the ones that I think are truly extraterrestrial are like a mile, like a mile length, and it's just enormously huge. But these craft, like Ben just described, I believe are military. And perhaps, that was completely silent too. The pilot reported, he said there was no sound. He rolled his windows down. He tried to follow it as far as he could, but, after, 10 seconds, this thing, started moving, picking up speed and moving in a direction that the road was not traveling in. But, again, it's very similar to that. And then I had another report in North Carolina where, a woman was, vacationing by the water. And this craft, it was late at night, like 1 a.m, and this craft flew right overhead while she was out on her balcony smoking a cigarette. And, it was very similar to the same description.
Now, what about the Belgian UFO wave?
That one I thought was a hoax, wasn't it?
Yeah, the real famous picture turned out to be a hoax.
Well, okay, before we go and just throw that away as a hoax, I've had long conversations with Leslie Kane about this. The person that claims it was a picture that he hoaxed, he has not been able to replicate it. That's one of the things, and there's a little bit of hanky-panky going on there, so I would not 100% just say that that's 100% a hoax.
Well, that's just representative of what went on in Belgium. I think there was definitely a flap. I think that there was something unusual that occurred. It just, with all the reports and all the sightings that happened during that wave in Belgium, how come we have that one photograph? That, to me, does not make a lot of sense. The police cars have cameras in them.
But this is 1989 and 1990, and there were no cell phones. There were cell phones, but very few, and none took pictures.
Yeah, but guys like Ray in the 50s, 60s, and 70s walked around with 8mm, 12mm, 16mm. I mean, it just seems like if something went on for the multiple days it did somebody go, hey, let me grab my old 16mm and or my video camera and start filming this. I don't know. When you have these reports, as famous as that flap is, they're still only stories until you have some other type of evidence, a photo, film, multiple witnesses. Multiple witnesses are great, but it's still a story. It's still circumstantial evidence.
Yeah. Well, Bruce Maccabee says that a picture is the weakest part of the whole thing. It has to do with the witness.
Well, Bruce, he went on the record just recently with his wife's blurry photograph of what was supposed to be Bigfoot, and it's just this big blur. And he's like, right there, that's evidence right there. That's Bigfoot, and you can't see anything. I can't believe he said that.
Oh, wow. I haven't heard that one.
And then even Dave Politi says, I wouldn't even talk about this if it wasn't because this is Bruce Maccabee. So that's why I'm talking about it, because it's Bruce.
Yeah,
I'm thinking.
He put it on Facebook.
He put it on Facebook.
And the photo, I couldn't see anything in the photo, and the conclusions that were coming. I know Bruce. He's a great guy. That was kind of off the charts. I
couldn't believe he did that.
Right.
Yeah. The Bruce did a good job with Trent. That's another one where the hoax theory keeps coming up that object was hanging from the telephone wires. And, we have copies of Ray's analysis, and we also took the clearest copy of the original we could. And, that thing definitely is not hanging from the wire. It definitely has a plasma or some type of thermal downflow, and which the witnesses said they were hit with a blast of warm air, and that second picture is tilted towards them, and you can clearly see a downflow coming from that, something that in the 50s a hoaxer wouldn't have thought of. Mm-hmm. I don't think the Trent photo was a hoax at all because of the circumstances.
Yeah, Bruce did a good job on that.
Yeah, Bruce showed there's no string, and then recently somebody came out and said they mathematically proved there was a string on that thing. I'm like, why don't you show me a picture of the string? I don't care what your math says. They still can't produce a picture of the string. And so that's another one of those cases where people go, oh, wasn't that his side mirror from his truck hanging from the wire? Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's clearly has some type of
yeah. Those are all really convincing. Well, I'm glad that they're that the Kent photo or Trent photo. Pardon me. They do a celebration every year about that. There's like a little conference, and I think that is one that will never get totally debunked. People have tried, like you said.
Yeah, they should invite us. We'll show the evidence. You can take the picture. I mean, the original photograph, without any contrasting at all, clearly shows this funnel-shaped downflow beneath that. And that's just something that people wouldn't think of. It's like that famous photo of the silver cigar-shaped object in Brazil, I think, that an engineer snapped with this big white plume coming out of the back. Really neat photo, but it's flying over a river, and in the river is a reflection of the craft. I don't think anybody in that time frame.
Propulsion in the water too, right?
Yeah, and the stream coming out behind it. I don't think anybody had the capability or even would have thought of a picture of black and white from. I think that's from the 50s also.
Or even putting breasts on Bigfoot for the human.
Yeah, the Patterson footage of Bigfoot. I think that's a real hominoid.
I would never think to put breast on a suit.
Yeah, that's in the middle of nowhere. It requires horses to get to that location, and the footprints were deep imprints and I've seen the digital analysis of that.
Let's not forget the request on it.
The knees are in the wrong place. The face, when they finally digitize the face, is incredibly detailed. The mouth is in the wrong place. There were no I don't know of any suits made for females in that time frame, but they estimated the female was at least 6.5 feet tall, weighed close to 600-700 pounds.
Well, anatomically, too, the legs and hip and all that did not really line up with the human.
Right. And the rippling muscle in the thigh and buttocks and back is just, there's no suit made that was that tight, that thin skin.
Not even today.
Yeah.
It's not easy to do that.
And that gait, they couldn't reproduce the gait because the knee's in the wrong place. And it's kind of along the lines of a gorilla. I think Bigfoot is probably an undiscovered, maybe Darwinian or, an unknown species of some type of remnant of early man, maybe some kind of Neanderthal hybrid or something. But I think the reason we don't find that thing is it's real smart. And as one of the famous climbers of Mount Everest said when he encountered it, he said, the reason we don't see it is because we know these things can smell us when we're 3 miles away. And they're very intelligent. Everyone they survived all this time. Yeah, they're just very intelligent,
I think
very
that
powerful.
They're also associated with UFO sightings as well. I don't think they spend time here. I think they're getting either beamed up or something.
I don't know about that, but
well, yeah, we're way off topic, but
that's reaching.
We can't find them.
That's reaching.
Since we're so far off topic, are there a lot of Bigfoot sightings in your area, or any?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that because we were talking to Stan Gordon and Ronald Murphy about coming out to my house in Pennsylvania next spring. We were supposed to do it this year, but Ronald Murphy's wife was injured at work, and we had to cancel the trip. But hopefully we'll get Stan Gordon to come out as well. We're going to do a Bigfoot hunt out in Allegheny by the Kinzu Dam. There's been quite a number of reported sightings there, and Ronald did some research, and he says he knows where to look. We're not experts in that field. We're just coming along for the ride and to assist in any way we can. Maybe we'll provide the guns and ammo or something, but it's a really interesting subject, and he showed us some placer casts, which were really interesting, and it's just it's a subject I'm not too familiar with, but I'm learning.
It's like hunting for dinosaurs. I mean, there's species discovered all the time. Gorillas weren't actually made known to be real until I think the 1950s. And just because you can't find something, the evidence suggests there is something out there. One of the most famous guys in the world that's studying this, Mulder, I think, the scientist. He's convinced it's some type of hominoid or Gigantopithecus that we haven't discovered yet. And there were creatures like that. Yeah, there were creatures like that. If these things survive, the Darwinians, how do you pronounce that?
Let's just call them the Ds.
They were, extremely powerful, very big, much stronger than today's athletes, much faster, just incredible creatures, and if these things have survived all this time, they've learned how to survive. They know how to hide. They've seen, don't understand it, but technology come after them. They probably understand that people are searching for them, and if they can smell you 3 or 4 miles away, like most animals can in the wild, then you're not going to find them. Just like bears. How many bear carcasses do we find? Not hardly any.
That's something I never thought of, but yeah, I guess so.
Elephants, you don't find the carcasses because they wander off to specific places when they're dying.
Maybe they eat them.
Yeah. Speaking of X-Files, you just mentioned, we have upcoming guest, Dean Haglund, who played Ringo Langley in the X-Files. He's going to be on to talk about UFOs. He has confirmed. I'm just setting up a date, so that's an upcoming guest.
Cool.
Well,
big X-Files fans. They need to have some hint MUFON investigators on that show.
Yeah, we know a couple.
They mentioned MUFON several times. We can play ourselves and be a very integral part of getting Mulder on the right track.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to redo the show. I know that we had 7 episodes. Was it 7 episodes?
Yeah, they've already said they're coming back with another season.
Well, that's good. Yeah, that's great. They were back. A lot of really good fans.
Love that show.
Yeah, it's great. So we have about 10 or 15 minutes left. Is there any particular case that comes to mind that either one of you have personally investigated that was really very, very good, that you thought was a really solid case?
You mean that's current?
Yeah, fairly. I'm not talking about Socorro, but fairly current, or in your MUFON career, so to speak.
There's one that we're kind of still working on, which has to do with Shenandoah. Apparently, when it rains on this one particular mountain, this individual noticed these black UFOs that seem to come out of the clouds pretty consistently. And we're trying to get up there to hopefully capture this on film. And we're probably going to get around. I don't know if we can get there by this December. I'm not sure. But we also want to get back down to North Carolina and visit Chris Bledsoe and film some of the evidence that he's been showing us on his phone and hopefully capture it on our phones or our equipment.
Yeah, I had a trio of cases in Shenandoah, which is up in the mountains here in Virginia. There's a deep pass in between the mountains, a good place to fly around, not be seen. But I had a couple of cases that were unknown to each other that tied into the fact that there's some really strange things going on. One family, I talked to the son because the mother talked to me for a second and then couldn't talk anymore. And his son told me that she's so freaked out she doesn't leave the house at night because things swoop down out of the sky and scare the crap out of her. And then there was a child that disappeared from a house and then turned up still in his baby seat on the neighbor's house hours later after the police couldn't find him. And, it gets very emotional when things like that happen. Just really bizarre. Some mutilations up there, all in the same area. And we've actually had somebody in a political position up in that area tell us a UFO story. So that is where we're getting some very interesting cases. I did have a triangle case where it wasn't reported to MUFON, but the guy told me his story after one of our meetings that he had come to of a triangle, but, it was really bizarre. And the ones that you think might actually be the truth are the ones that are just so weird that you couldn't even think them up. But this guy saw a triangle, and then it followed him, then it hit him with a light, and then all of a sudden there was a light next to his car that went through his car and went through him, and then 2 hours later he's watching this thing move away. So it had the combination of this weird almost contact with some type of entity and missing time and black triangles and white spheres.
Wow.
Just a really strange case that I can't go into all the detail, but sometimes you get these cases where you go, that is just so bizarre that it sounds like it's true because
I understand
you can't
that.
make some of this stuff up. And when you get down to some of the cases that might be have happened exactly as they are, and when people just report what happened and it's really bizarre, it's kind of makes sense because, as Carl Sagan said, when you encounter an advanced technology, everything they do could look like magic. They could be like gods, and you just don't know how their technology will operate. So, that's why, in some ways, the Bible could be reports of people having encounters with advanced civilizations and mistaking them for angels and demons and gods.
Yeah,
not to say that's true. I don't want to upset any Christians out there, but Ezekiel's wheel and a lot of these reports. I mean, it's easy to say that was God, but it sounds like technology.
Well,
and
let's face it, without being cruel in any type of way, that religion often explained many unexplainable things through other means.
Faith. Faith is the main thing.
Yeah.
Just you have to believe that happened is divine. But when you describe some of these things, it just sounds like abductions and technology and somebody trying to guide us into a better ways. It's like every culture on Earth has these records or a legend history of a race coming either from the sky or across the waters and teaching them when to plant seeds and how to build structures and the progression of the equinox and the whole world of astronomy and how to plant during seasons. And, it's just strange that every culture, no matter how old they are, reverts back to another culture that didn't seem to be earthly. So whether that's angels or visitors, could be both, could be either. that's why we kind of pursue this thing, because it makes the world much more interesting if all it takes is for one of these reports to be a real UFO, as Stanton Friedman has said, and then you got something.
Yeah.
And
I know it's so elusive.
Yeah, I don't think 100% of these cases are all, explainable. It's just, it's one of those things where you have to open your mind and realize that if there are 2 trillion universes or galaxies in the universe, then there's probably mathematically the Drake equation in this expanded version.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's probably 100 million civilizations in our Milky Way galaxy, maybe more. But it seems like Goldilocks planets, not too far, too close to the sun, where liquid water is present, is very, very common in the universe. And carbon and water and all these elements are found everywhere in the universe. So that would mean that, especially if we find, which I think there are fossils on Mars when that had an atmosphere, if you find evidence of life on any other planet in our solar system, then mathematically it's everywhere.
Right. Yeah. And it could be on the moon too, not just a planet.
Europa, I think, under the oceans of the ice is these oceans on Europa. There's probably life in those oceans.
Right. Matthew wants to know: do either of you actively skywatch, or do you use infrared night vision technology? Any tips that you can suggest to prove the odds of seeing a craft? And someone else want to know: have either one of you actually witnessed a UFO?
Yes, the best way to shoot at night is not to do it during the daytime. You're gonna get a lot more. You actually get a lot more activity during the daytime, especially during sunset. Which, Ray was telling us for the longest time. He's like, hey, when the sun's going down, it ionizes, polarizes the light, and if anything is cloaking in infrared, you're gonna see it. So we kind of did that. We experimented with it when we were in New Mexico. Sure enough, sun's going down, I had my camera ready, and we were looking out the window, rolled the window down, saw something, photographed about a series of 7 to 10 shots. We still don't know exactly what we captured, but it was something emitting light. It was moving quickly, it changed direction, and it went away from us at quite a distance. And very fast. We don't know exactly what it was because I did not bring my telephoto lens. So one thing for sure is have a really good camera if you can afford it, as much as you can afford, and a really good telephoto lens. A friend of mine, she likes to go to the zoo and shoots animals, and she takes some of the best amateur photographs of, lions and tigers and bears. And I said, man, what kind of camera do you have? She says, I have a Canon, was it Canon 60 or something? And I said, how much was that thing? She's like, it was about, $1,000 or something for the body. I said, how much was that lens? She's like, it was about $2,000 for the lens. I'm thinking, man, I need to get some money because if I had her camera and that telephoto lens, what we saw when we shot in New Mexico might be a little more identifiable. So, if you have the money and you can afford a really good camera, and today's cameras, like the Canons and the Nikons, they also have the ability to shoot video in RAW format and all these great features that capture a lot of data on those little SD cards. So yeah, I wouldn't invest too much into night vision cameras and shooting at night, simply because what are you going to get? You're going to see a bright light against darkness, and it's going to be moving very quickly.
No data.
Yeah, there's actually nothing to analyze there. But during the day, you get 3-dimensional light. You have an object with reflection. You know where the sun is. You can, just get so much more information, especially if you can see the ground or something to relate to the object, so you know approximately how far away it is from a mountain range or from trees or from known objects of known height, known distance, in order to triangulate the location of it in 3-dimensional space. At night, how are you going to do that? All you're going to have is, and now if you see lights at night that are moving in triangular shapes and zigzagging around and just acting completely bananas, that's great if you're going to videotape it. But what we found is that things taken in photographs at night, just a dot in the sky, it's really just nothing you can really do with it. Yeah.
Yeah, lights in the sky are tough. I've seen some things that, I have no idea what they are, but, the question that you hear a lot of, not always skeptics, but even people in the UFO field say is, how come we're not seeing more good UFO films? Pictures. Everybody has a nice camera in their pocket on their phone. Why aren't we seeing better pictures? Just wanted to hear your side of that.
Well, having been in this field a long time, the one thing that happens a lot is when you see something extraordinary, you forget you got a camera nearby.
Yeah.
You just
that happened to me. I mean, I understand that. Yeah.
Everybody's told me that. And so you're like, God damn. And then when it happened to us, we were doing a presentation at a library down in McLean, Virginia, and this tumbling black sphere was flying over our heads because we could see the jets heading towards Dulles to the west. This thing was going from north to south, and we couldn't film it. I mean, I looked through my camera on my phone. All I could see was the sun. Tony pulled out his camera, which was supposed to be fully charged. It was dead. And so, and this happens a lot. There are cases where cameras drain really quickly.
That's true.
And I think if they are using a plasma beam and that, like the beam ahead that Ray talks about, then maybe those things can shut down your devices. But I think a factor is people aren't looking up. People look only at night where you don't get much data. You just get a light. The daytime, the sunrise and sunset, that's when you can really get a lot of data, and probably these things are flying around a lot more. But people are driving home from work or they're picking up the kids. They're just not looking up there. But if you look through some reputable sites and some of the data, the files from MUFON, there are great footage of UFOs. And James Fox's Out of the Blue starts with a black disc hovering over a telephone pole. He said, people say you don't have clear footage of a UFO. Well, here's clear footage of a disc hanging in the air. And there are some film from back before CGI and Photoshop that show very incredible things flying in the air. So it's out there. You just have to separate it from CGI and the hoaxers and the Third Phase of Moon and all these guys that just put up a lot of BS.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, there's that, and there's another one, Secure Team 10, I think it's called.
Secure Team 6, Secure Team 7. You know, if you just hear Secure Team, then you know it's a fake news story.
Yeah, I had a former military. I'm trying to think of Chris Mellon was on this show. He's only done 2 interviews, and part of the Defense Department years ago. And he saw a Secure Team 10 video, and he wrote me, "Is this real?" So they fool, someone really intelligent that knows a lot of things, and it's a shame. It's again just one of the things I talk about, muddying the waters. And it's not going to get any better.
And that's why we're trying to capture our own data. We're trying to move more towards. We'll still work the cases and all, but what we want to do is capture our own data. That way we immediately know we're not starting with a hoax because we filmed it. And then we can, because there's certain things to look for. The purple, the green plasma discharges around these objects, the warping of space, the fields. There's a difference between that and pixelation where an object is inserted into a film or a picture. But these things that seem to be using exotic propulsion have multiple colors. They're distorted. They're very interesting. They don't seem to be nuts and bolts, and they don't operate under any laws of physics that we know.
Yeah. Hey, we're out of time. Can one of you blurt out the MUFON website one more time?
Yeah, it's www.mufonva.com. And for those of you who are in the Northern Virginia area, Ben and I will be speaking this Friday at the Alamo Draft House in Ashburn, introducing the new movie Arrival.
All right, Arrival. Wow. Okay, guys, thanks so much. And we'll be talking to you again, I'm sure, real soon.
Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
All right, take care. All right, everyone, thanks so much for hanging in and listening, or if you're listening to the podcast, thanks for supporting the show. Next week, we have David Paris. He was on before, several years ago, talking about warp drive. He says he has some updates he wants to talk about. Should be an interesting show next week. And I want to thank the people that help out with the show. Peggy for managing the Facebook page, Carrie Lloyd Whitehouse for the music, Alejandro Rojas for the news. And that's it. We'll see you next week. Remember to keep your eyes to the sky.